everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Craft Cut Magic. And today what we're going to be doing is we're going to start getting into the fall kind of Halloween mood by making some 3D pumpkin crafts. So let's get started by gathering up all of our materials and we'll jump right into that project. So we have a couple of different materials this time from normal, just because I want to do a couple of different things with this project this time that's different from my previous videos. So some of the materials that you need, of course, is some cardstock paper. You're going to want your light grip mat. You want probably a weeder tool just in case. We have our scraper squeegee tool. And then for this project in particular, you're going to want some form of adhesive. I'm going to be using tacky glue because I just don't think a glue stick is going to cut it this time to make a more permanent project. If you wanted to though, instead of using like tacky glue, you could go ahead and you could use double-sided tape if you would like. It would probably be a lot easier and you're not going to have to wait for things to dry. Now, you probably also notice I have a pen here, and so this is actually a Cricut specific pen. We are going to be doing a little bit of drawing on our project today, and so this is an extra fine point 0.3 pen, and it is in the color of tangerine, just because I'm going to be putting some fun little designs to make it a little more like a pumpkin, so I want this pen to be able to trace those outlines. And then from there, after the outlines, really it's going to be personal preference. So if you want to fill in those little decorative marks with Sharpie, you could definitely go ahead and do that, which is why I do have an orange Sharpie out here. But if you wanted, you could also go ahead and paint this project. So I have orange paint right here, just really cheap. I got it at the craft store. Pretty much all of this came from the craft store. And so I'm going to be using paint today, but you could definitely go ahead and use a Sharpie. And then obviously, if you're using paint, you're going to want a paintbrush. And then one more thing for this project is you're going to need some kind of a scoring device. Now, this is the blade housing that has the scoring wheel attached to it. And so this is also the single scoring wheel. It does come with two heads, or at least it used to. I've had this one for quite some time. So usually when you get this particular blade housing, this one comes with more than one. So you have the singular scoring wheel, and you can see it says 0, 1 off on the side, or we have the double blade wheel housing, and you can kind of see the difference right there. There are two wheels. It has the number 2 on it. So that's just the difference between a single scoring and a double scoring wheel. I want the single scoring wheel for this one, and I am going to be using the blade housing. However, if you don't want to spend the money on the blade housing in particular, I know that Cricut has a scoring pen. And so the scoring pen is pretty much more or less just like a pen. So it would go into cartridge A inside of our Cricut machine, and pretty much it will score just like a pen. It kind of looks similar to this, but with a different topper to it. But it doesn't really matter which one you have as long as you can use it. If you don't want to, you can also just go ahead and try to fold this project right down the middle for assembly. It's really just up to you. I'm going to be using the scoring wheel though for just ease of folding, because I don't have the best tendency of folding in complete straight lines, and I would like it to be as perfect as possible for this project. So then of course, after you have all of this, you're going to want a Cricut machine, and then you're going to want your device that has Design Space installed onto it, because now we're going to switch over to the computer and I'm going to show you how we're going to set up our project on Design Space. So let's get into that. All right, so welcome onto Design Space. This is just the home page. Now, Cricut has been going through a couple of updates, so you can probably see if you've been watching some of my other videos, Design Space looks a little bit different now. One thing that I definitely noticed is that the Canvas tab up here is not currently available. it used to be when you got onto Design Space, you would have the Home tab and the Canvas tab right there. But we don't have that anymore, which is just fine because we always just come over and we click New Project. And then if this comes up for you, you always click on Blank Canvas. All right, so now we've immediately gone into our canvas. From here, you can see it pulled up images straight away for us. And this actually works in our favor. However, if you don't have images pop up, just know it's going to be over on the left-hand side of your computer, just underneath this little images tab. Now, we are going to want to be working with pumpkins. So you can kind of see I've done a little bit of research. I'm just going to type in pumpkin right here, and then I am actually going to filter by free just because I don't have the Cricut Access subscription, and that will make it easier for you to do these kinds of projects if you don't have that subscription. Now, if you do have the subscription, you guys don't need to worry about filtering for the kind of pumpkin that you want. However, in this case, I do. So there aren't too many pumpkins to choose from here. I'm seeing some pies and stuff and some kind of silly looking pumpkins. So I think the pumpkin that I'm going to go with is actually going to be this pumpkin right here. Now, you might be wondering how I'm going to be able to make a project like this when there are so many different pieces to it. I'm going to actually be duplicating this pumpkin twice, because I'm going to cut out the stem of this pumpkin in particular so that we can use it as the center of our little decoration. And so we will also be able to get the flat line for where it's supposed to be while we cut it, and we're not going to be dealing with the stem as we continue through. And if that didn't make sense to you, I promise it will here in a minute. So let's start by cutting out this stem piece for our pumpkin. Now, the first thing that I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this one pumpkin over here. I'm going to contour it, hide all the contours, because really what we're looking for is going to be this stem piece right here. And I'm going to want a little bit underneath so that we'll be able to put it down inside of the pumpkin. So now that I have just a full kind of outline of the pumpkin, I'm going to come over here to Shapes on the left-hand side. I'm going to be choosing this piece right here. Now I'm going to bring it over. I'm going to start kind of aligning it. And for me in particular, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I don't think it needs to go that far in. And now, to line it up a little bit better onto the stem, I'm going to unlock the proportions, and I'm going to be working with it side to side. So you can see here, I'm trying to get it right onto that little piece, and then I'm going to come over here as well. I'm going to look. Okay, this is looking good. So now we can go ahead and we can slice our image. Now, slicing is actually pretty easy. You're just going to click and drag so both the pumpkin and this little pennant shape are selected, and you're just going to go ahead and click slice right down here. So now we have all these different kinds of pieces over here in our layers. I'm just going to select all of the pieces that I don't need, and then with this result in particular, I just kind of want you to see this is the piece I'm talking about. What we're going to be doing is selecting that. We're going to contour, and we're going to take this giant piece of the pumpkin out of our project. Going to select both, and we are going to weld this result together. Now, I always caution when we are welding results, especially from slicing, because sometimes what happens, which is really kind of funny, but with certain images, when you slice and then you weld back together, lines get created. Just cut lines that shouldn't be there and they weren't originally. So I always caution you to double check your results when you are welding an image together, just to make sure that everything is okay. Now, if you saw down here, when you weld something together, and I'll just kind of show you like this, When you hover over weld, it tells you that the action can't be undone. Nice thing is that technically, if this wasn't the way you wanted, you can come up here to the undo, and you can undo the action of welding those two pieces together. So don't let welding ever scare you, because you can undo it despite what it tells you. Alright, so I am happy with how this little stem piece looks for when we are going to be cutting out our project. So now what we have to do is we have to get rid of the stem over on our original pumpkin. So once again, we're going to take a shape, and this time I'm just going to do a square. I'm going to make it a different color, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. I'm going to bring the pumpkin down actually. And the nice thing about the square is that I don't necessarily have to unlock proportions. It already kind of understands what I'm trying to do. And I'm going to try to line up this bottom corner once again with that stem. And the same thing on this side as well. So I'm going to use my arrows, move things down a little bit. I think I want this over just a tad, and I am going to change the layers as well, just kind of try and see a little bit better where my shape is resting. And if you need to zoom in as well in order to see this a little bit better when you're doing this on your own, definitely do so. Okay, I think I have it. So the stem's going to be cut out. Once again, you click and you drag across both the pumpkin and your shape, slice the image, and then for this one we can actually get rid of everything except for the main portion of the pumpkin. From there, we're going to contour. We're going to take out this little piece, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this for a minute, but we're going to come back in a second to contouring as well, and you'll see why. So now we have our pumpkin, and you can see, hang on. I'm actually going to move it up just a hair. Don't do what I just did and completely drag your pumpkin across. Going to slice. Going to get rid of these again. Ah, that looks much better. So if you saw, the line kind of dug into the pumpkin just a tad, which granted, that's probably not the biggest problem in the world, but I just wanted to make it a little bit smoother for my own sanity. So I went back and I undid and I fixed things up a little bit. We're going to contour that piece out once again, and now this is the pumpkin that I am happy with for the next steps. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to set up this pumpkin so that all of these fun little pieces I'm going to be able to draw, and that will make sense here in a minute. I'm going to once again duplicate this piece, and honestly, it doesn't really matter how they're aligned on top of each other because I'm going to select both. We're going to come up here to align, and we're just going to center them both straight on top of each other. The one underneath, I'm going to make a dark orange, and then I'm going to contour. I'm just going to hide all of those contours, and we get a nice big pumpkin. So here's that piece that we just created. Now with the slice result over the top, now we want to turn this into a draw image. So we are going to select on that top layer. And the first thing that we're actually going to be doing is we're going to contour. And the only thing that we need to do for this step is we're going to select the outside image, which is going to make each of these little pieces on the inside show up. So this is kind of what it looks like currently. We're going to change the operation from a basic cut to a pen. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I am going to change the kind of pen that I have as well. So you can see that my color of pen is tangerine, and that kind of doesn't exist anymore. So just to make it a little more noticeable while we work on this, I'm going to, because as you can see, orange doesn't necessarily really show up on this, I'm going to make it red as the outline. Not that that's the color that we're going to be using, but it just helps us denote what's what here on the canvas. Now, this is how we want this to be, and I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to group these two together for a minute. We will be ungrouping this, and there's a reason why. So I want you to see here at the bottom how this isn't necessarily a straight line for a pumpkin, and you wouldn't think that it's a major problem, but it actually can be, especially since this is a three-dimensional project. So if we don't have a flat surface on the bottom of our pumpkin, it's going to teeter-totter around because of this point in the middle. So we don't want that. So we're going to get rid of everything and make it one flat line. So let's do that. Alright, so as you can see, I just went ahead and I added a shape onto the canvas, something that has a straight edge to it, and I went ahead and I extended it to be the size actually longer than the size of the pumpkin itself, and then I went ahead and I put it onto the bottom until you can see that there is going to be a flat surface all the way across our pumpkin. From there, I actually duplicated the square into two. And the reason that is because we're going to come over here, we're going to ungroup these layers because each layer has to be done by itself. So we can slice the orange so that it's flat, and then we're also going to slice that draw image so it's flat as well, because there's no reason for the pumpkin to continue to draw past the point where it's going to get cut off anyway. So we're just going to slice both of those. And then what's nice about this one is you're going to just be deleting all of those pieces. Then I'm going to select the square and the draw. We're going to slice that as well. Going to select all those. And now we have the base of our pumpkin. Going to group these back together for a minute, because the last thing we do before we attach this whole thing together is we actually need one more thing, and that is the score line down the middle. And score lines can be found under shapes, and it's just this line right here. So we're going to grab that, we're going to bring it over. I'm going to extend it so that it's pretty much the length of the pumpkin. Going to select both. Once again, we're going to align it and center it together so we know that the score line is going right down the middle of our pumpkin. And really quick, I do just want to see the line is a score line. Now, technically what you could do is a lot of these different things. You could make it a basic cut line if you want to and completely cut the image straight in half. That's not what we want to do in this case. I do want to score line it, so technically nothing needed to change, but just know that that is an option and a function that you can have. So now I'm just going to select all three of these, the pumpkins and the line, and I'm going to attach this together. And that just means that when we go to cut out this image, it's all going to be right on top of each other, exactly where we want it to be, and it's not just going to be like, oh, you're going to be cutting out the pumpkin over on this side and the drawing for it's going to be over here, the score line is somewhere else. It's weird that it happens that way inside of Design Space, but if you don't attach things together, that can be what happens. So now we have our pumpkin complete right here. Now I just need to change it a little bit and adjust sizing. we're going to make 3 different sizes of pumpkins. All right, that's wonderful. So I'm liking the way all 3 of these are looking. Now real quick, I just want to double check our little stem graphic behind these new pumpkins, just to make sure that it's going to look right. And it looks like it will, which is wonderful. So we are ready to go with that. Now, one thing that I haven't done yet is I haven't duplicated the 3 pumpkins to what we would like to cut out. So I would like to cut out, so I have 6 copies of each. So I'm just going to 3, 4, 5, 6. Just copied all of them. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one is going to be the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I know that kind of seems strange, but we just need 3 stems. And that's the whole reason why I'm doing this, is because if I were to go in and say, hey, I want to make 5 different versions of this project, that's great and everything, but that would also mean that I would have 5 different stems, or like 6 different stems, which is great, but not ideal. So I'm just duplicating everything out so that we don't have to deal with that when we get into making our project. So from here, all that's left to do is save our project. So we're just going to hit save. You can title it whatever you would like. I'm just going to label this 3D pumpkins. Going to go ahead and save. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to come over to the green make button. And we're going to start loading in our project. It's going to be on mat in a 12 by 12 inch size. Hit confirm. So now one challenge that I'm going to be facing is the fact that my material is going to be 8.5 by 11 or letter size pieces of paper. So I'm going to select that, and you probably just saw all of our orange sheets of material changed. So now I get to go through and I get to readjust all of these pages so that we fit the most onto each piece of orange cardstock paper. So moving things around on mats is actually pretty simple. All you'll do is you'll come down to the image that you want to move, the shape, whatever it is. You find the 3 dots, you move the object to the page that you want it to be on, you hit confirm, and then from here you might notice that there's something strange. And I promise you, you did not just lose your image. The thing is that because you already had one here, now you have 2 images over the top of each other. So always keep that in mind when you're moving images around. If you don't change positioning first, you might end up kind of losing track of the image that you're trying to move around onto your mats. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now with all this figured out, we are ready to go ahead and continue, because the only thing that I had to worry about was all of the orange pieces fitting on top of each other. So now we can go ahead and click continue. And then once we are connected to our machine, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be selecting our kinds of cardstock. And it's going to be this light cardstock here. Now you're going to see that we have some different kinds of things this time for us to do. So I'm going to move on to mat 1. And you can see we need to load in the pen And for this, I also need to load in the single scoring wheel in clamp B. And you can see it says clamp A and clamp B, and then you need that fine point blade as well. Now, if you were going to be using the stylus, you can see that you can edit tools. You can change it to that scoring stylus instead. I'm going to be using the scoring wheel, so this is just fine, but you can use that stylus as well. Now, all that we would have to do is load in our materials and press go. And this is the same thing that we're going to be doing for all of our orange pieces for our pumpkins. The only thing that we won't have to be doing all of these different kinds of tools and materials for is going to be the green stems. We're just going to need the fine point blade in there. So let's switch over to the camera and I'll show you what we're going to be doing there before we get our project completely loaded in. All right, so we've switched back over to the computer. I'm going to bring my Cricut machine forward, which is something that you should do as well, especially so that you have enough space behind your Cricut so that you're not going to run into anything behind it. And so always keep that in mind. So be sure that you have enough space behind your Cricut so that nothing happens. Now, the thing that I want to focus on is going to be clamps A and clamps B right here. Now, clamps A and B are very important on the Cricut, and we haven't really talked about this much since we did the unboxing video. And if you haven't seen that, I can link it down below for when we unboxed our Cricut for the first time. But you have two clamps. You have clamp A and you have clamp B. So both of these are very important. Clamp A is where we hold all of our different kinds of pens. So such as this orange pen that we're going to be using, we're going to be putting that into clamp A. If you were using the scoring stylus, you would also be loading that directly into clamp A after you use the pen, because you always load in order that it tells you. So all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking the tip, the cover off of the pen. So we have this exposed. If I can focus on it. There we go. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to open clamp A. And now this is something that I do with my pens is I will always hold my left hand underneath so that the jig doesn't move around. From there, all you do is you take your pen and you load it face down and you press until you hear it make a noise. So once it's done that, you can go ahead and you can close clamp A. Now the other thing that we need to do is we need to load in the scoring wheel in my case. So make sure that it is the singular scoring wheel that you have loaded in. We're going to unlock clamp B. From there, we are going to remove the fine point blade housing. We're just going to gently put this off on the side, lay it down, keep it somewhere safe, and then we're going to load in our scoring wheel just like that. Kind of try to make sure that the gears line up, and then close clamp B. So now that both of those tools are loaded in, now all that we have to deal with is getting our materials loaded in. And so of course you're going to want your light grip mat available to you now. I'm going to remove the covering and you're going to place that somewhere safe. You're going to take the paper that you're using, line it up in that left hand corner. Try to get it as straight as you can. And we're just going to kind of flatten it on. And then from here, we can go ahead and load in our material. Always be sure to line up your mat within the guides and push it all the way up until it's flush against those rollers. And then you can go ahead and load in your project. So now that we have this loaded in, we can go ahead and click on the flashing go button, and this is going to begin to cut out. All right, so now that we have completed drawing and scoring our project, over on your computer, you would see that it now says that you have to load in the fine point blade into clamp B, and then you press the go button to resume. Now, if you don't change out your blade, the Cricut machine will actually know, and it will get kind of upset with you. It won't actually, it will just tell you once again, hey, you need to change out the blade so that it's the fine point housing blade. So I'm just going to remove the pen as well. You don't have to, I'm just doing that. Then you can go ahead and you can hit go once again. And now it's going to start cutting as soon as it detects that there is no scoring wheel inside. Ta-da! And so that was super easy. I'm just going to double check. Yep, this is going to come off just fine. So now we can go ahead and we can unload our mat. And then just like with all of our projects, we're going to bend the mat backwards in order to get our paper off and to keep our little pieces intact. So let me show you in better lighting here what each of these pieces looks like. And I know that you're probably wondering what happened with the paper on the mat. It's completely normal for that to happen sometimes with different kinds of paper. So as you can see now, I have a nice big orange line down the middle. That's okay. Sometimes it just kind of shows the different kinds of paper. I'm just going to try to get it off with my little scraper tool so that it doesn't really inhibit my project going forward. Okay, and so now that I have as much of that off as possible, I just want to kind of show you, and it's a little difficult to see, but on here you can kind of see that I have these little orange lines on the pumpkin, and that's going to be our template for whether you wanted to fill in with a Sharpie or if you wanted to go ahead and paint into those spots as well. And then because we have that score line there, technically, if you want to as well, you could just keep this the way it is. But because we have that score line, it's really easy now to go ahead and fold your project in half, which is going to make it super easy for when we assemble our project. So now that you've kind of seen that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue to cut out the rest of the pieces for all of our pumpkins. And once that's done, we're going to cut out the stems as well. So let's get into that. All right, so we have all of our pieces cut out. So now I'm just going to put away our light grip mat. I put away the Cricut machine, shut it down, turned off my computer, closed it up, because now we're getting into the fun stuff. So now we have these 3 different sizes of pumpkins. I'm just going to kind of sort them out for a second. All right, perfect. So now here comes the step that you don't have to do. I think it's going to add to the project a little bit, but this is where you could take paint or maybe a Sharpie, and you can go ahead, and I'm going to start going in between these little lines that we made. Sorry about that. So I'm going to start going in between all these little lines that we created here, and we're going to start to get that all kind of colored in, give it some fun little decorative lines to it so that you can really tell that it's a pumpkin when we're all done. So I just kind of took on a different camera angle here. So first I kind of want to show you what it will look like with Sharpie, and I'm just going to show you on one little piece of this. Now, Sharpie is probably the easiest way to go if you're a little bit pressed for time. So you can kind of see, now you can see that little piece on that pumpkin better. However, I find Sharpie can be a little too harsh personally, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to switch over. We're going to start using paint, and we're pretty much just going to be doing the exact same thing. Going to be filling in all of those little lines. So let's get into it. So here is actually one of the pumpkin pieces painted, and I'll be honest, I do like the way that it's turning out with the paint compared to without. However, I do want you to see real quick that something that does happen with paint is that pumpkin is kind of starting to warp a tad. So just keep that in mind with paint. You could also probably see I did kind of mess up at first. So that little piece that we filled in, that was actually for the outside. Now, if you do this project, it doesn't really matter what you decide to do in terms of what you paint and what you don't, or what you fill in and what you don't. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and continue filling in all of mine with paint, and I will come back when all of them are done to show you how it all turned out. Okay, so we have now painted all of the little pumpkin pieces. And just to give you guys an idea on timing and stuff like that, I know for you guys, that time lapse only lasted a couple of seconds at the most. For me, that took about a half hour to paint all of these little pieces. I think it's worth it because of how good it's looking, but just kind of keep that in mind as you are going with your projects, that some ways might take a little bit longer than others in order to complete. Now that I have finished painting the small pumpkin, I did want to show you how this is going to work all together. Now this one is still kind of drying a little bit, so we're going to do that piece last. So now I kind of want to give you an idea of our pumpkin. So I've folded all of these little pieces in half, and now I'm just going to check and see which side is the bottom. Perfect. So now that I know which pieces are the bottom, I'm going to take 3 of these at first. I'm going to pull over the tacky glue. I'm just going to put a thin drizzle of glue on here. And I'm going to attach the 2 pieces together and try to line them up as good as I can. And I don't know if you could just see me glue that piece, but don't worry if you couldn't. I'm going to be doing it again here in just a second. So now we have those 2 pieces together. You can let it dry. I'm going to continue on though to glue down the next piece. I'm really just kind of using that tip to thin out the glue so it doesn't come really spurting out the sides. I'm just going to place the next piece. Line it up. Sure that going on there correctly. So you can already kind of get an idea of how it's going to look. Now the thing is, for our little stem, how do we want to do the stem? I'm thinking I'll just glue it in the middle after I've done both sides. So I'm gonna put that off on the side. I'm gonna gather my other pieces. And we're gonna do the same thing again. Gluing it together. Making sure that it lines up with the other piece. Pressing it down so that they stick together well. And the nice thing about these pumpkins is that if you want to make more to go in between, you certainly could. You would like. I just chose to do 6 because I figured that would be a pretty good number for a project such as this. But you could definitely up your counts if you want to do 8 pumpkins and glue them all together to create one centerpiece. You could do that too. So some of it is definitely, and as always, up to you on what you would like to do. And get that glue. Okay, so now we have 2 sides. I am actually going to do something real quick. And take these scissors, and because I want to be able to reuse mine, I'm just going to go ahead and actually going to cut it in half so that when I put the stem on, like so, what's nice is that we'll be able to fold it back, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to take some glue. I'm going to line this up and glue it down. And I know I didn't need a weeder tool earlier. I'm going to use my weeder tool now to kind of scrape that glue off of that little corner. And if that doesn't work, you can always use your nail. All right, so now all that's left to do is glue the 2 sides together. Make everything look nice. And now when we pull our pumpkin together like so, technically what we could do is, I'm actually going to put a piece of tape on both sides. And this is how we're going to put this pumpkin together without the use of, say, like a paper clip. And this is going to make it so we can go ahead and use this in the future too. Because if we just attach it with tape, it's going to be a whole lot easier in the end to reuse. So there's our first pumpkin. Now all we have to do is repeat all of that for the next 2 pumpkins and we will have our completed project. All right, so now I just painted the second set of pumpkins. And once again, it did take me a hot minute to get all of these painted. So once again, keep that in mind. Now we're just going to assemble this the same way that we did the small pumpkin. So let's get into it. So here is our second pumpkin. And actually, I like that one a lot better. But of course, right? That's because it is a little bit taller. It looks a little more like a true pumpkin. So now all we have to do is paint and assemble our tallest pumpkin, and then our project will be complete. All right, and now we have assembled all three of our pumpkins. And so here's how it turned out. I actually really like how everything looks, especially with the paint on the pumpkins for this. I think it really helped add some really cool effects to those three pumpkins. So now that these three are done, they're ready to go out and be part of our fun fall and Halloween decorations. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Craft Cut Magic. I hope you enjoyed making these Halloween kind of fall pumpkin 3D paper craft together with me. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.